Welcome to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. The content's geared towards owners and CEOs of small to medium-sized businesses, as well as IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name is Art Ocain. I'm the field CISO at Airiam. Our episode today is with US Signal, and joining me today is Pat Cannon from US Signal. And we're going to discuss resilience, what US Signal does, what capabilities they're adding to Airiam, kind of how we align, and some of the offerings that US Signal brings to market that we can start leveraging with our client base, and then you, our listeners, may want to know about from US Signal. So Pat, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
Great. So I ask everybody that joins this, and some people, it kind of catches them off guard because they may not have a routine, but how do you start your day? How does Pat get his day going?
Well, on a Monday, it's typically catching up on any emails that got missed over the weekend, right? But so that's how I would start from a work standpoint. Personally, I try to get out early and get a workout in, right? I feel like that's a good way to get the blood going, and just maintain a little bit of balance, right, between work and life. So.
Absolutely. And for working out, what do you do?
I go to a CrossFit gym here. I live in the west coast of Florida. A lot of CrossFit in Florida. So I do CrossFit.
Awesome. If you were a true CrossFitter, I would have already known you did CrossFit because you would have told me somehow along the way. But yeah, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's always fun. So US Signal, when I think of US Signal, I think of like data center offerings.
Yep.
So we're a resilience company. So we're focused on, the DRAS side of it and really how to get companies back up and running. And, so sometimes leveraging a data center technology is kind of handy for us because we can say, okay, your data center is a mess now. Let's just move you over to this private cloud and get you up and running and as fast as possible. Can you tell me about, US Signal's offerings that might align with that?
Yeah.
In a resilience kind of perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So very similar, from an intent standpoint, right? US Signal services, we always have a focus around resiliency, whether that be, the footprint of our network. So a lot of people know US Signal as starting in the carrier space. And so if you look at a map of our network, you'll notice that it's ringed in from a physical standpoint. So that allows us that physical ring topology, multiple paths from a networking standpoint, and then allows us to layer, self-healing protocols like BGP on top of that. So, same thing if you extrapolate that thought process to the data center side from a facility standpoint, right? So always trying to achieve multiple entrances, not only from a fiber standpoint, but from power as well. And then cooling redundancy and, UPS systems and generators as well. So, all across the board, even in our offerings of network and data center, we have a focus on resiliency as well. Now, if you start to think about what, you folks do in the cybersecurity space, I think the partnership there is around the DR as a service, which again, is a specific service designed for customers to be able to replicate their VMware environments to a cloud provider, a private cloud like US Signal, right? So I would say that's the main thing that I see as the partnership between the two organizations that works really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And there may be situations where a customer is on fire and they didn't have US Signal in place. There's no kind of DRAS solution ready to fail over to or anything. It's let's rebuild the environment in US Signal rather than have it bridged to on-prem at that point. And of course, that's something that's possible with US Signal as well. As far as your security offerings, I'm familiar with, SASE, Cato, things like that are really kind of cutting edge, zero trust, identity driven technologies that allow us to have some really optimized network experiences, but also, control who can access what, when, and really get a zero trust approach to, whether it's cloud applications or on-prem applications through SASE. Can off the top of your head, do you have other security offerings that might be relevant to the cybersecurity experts that are listening to the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. When we sit down with a customer, security is always at the forefront of what we're trying to consult them on, right? And we take a very holistic approach, right? Offense and defense and we have services in both of those areas, right? So we touched on DR as a service. That's more of in the recovery aspect, right? If you think through like the NIST cybersecurity framework, but in more of the preventative side, we do offer managed detection and response, and then we also have an extended detection and response offering as well. So, what we typically see customers, come into a provider like US Signal for around those services is, they're looking to get a shorter lead time to, effective cybersecurity protection, right? So kind of that rapid time to value, if you will, right? So organizations that may not have the staffing to, have 24/7 protection, right? We all know that most attacks happen, weekends, holidays, overnight, right? And so that's when we're most vulnerable. So, for a lot of organizations, aligning with a service provider affords them that ability to have that 24/7 protection.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that, that staffing pinch that you mentioned, like a lot of people just don't have the people to cover their SOC fully, and same thing on the IT side, just IT monitoring, patching, vulnerability management, things like that get dropped by internal teams because they're having to run so small. A lot of even large organizations are only running with like a 3 to 5 man IT team. And, we've seen very large, Fortune 1000 organizations that are running on a 5-person, really kind of DevOps concept team. But, it doesn't leave them any bandwidth to handle those hygiene items that need to be handled. So one of our offerings that we're bringing to market right now is really, that patching and that, really to be able to take our retainer offering and which covers incident response, but to leverage those hours for those pre-breach projects. So it's like to patch firewalls or do those legacy migrations to get that old software and that technical debt out of the environment and life cycle out those older servers and get people to the cloud and get people to a lower risk standpoint, the lower risk position than they are now. And because we're seeing so many times, like from vulnerability management, doing pen tests, you're seeing the same results all the time because the company never gets around to actually fixing them, nor prioritizing what's important. So we kind of want to be those extra hands to help people get in a better position there. And that time to value is exactly what you're talking about there. It's when we're, a company may put that as a priority for a whole year to, replace our identity solution, and where we can throw a whole team at it and get it done in a couple weeks and, just knock it out for the clients. So it's not a problem that's continuing to plague them into the future. And so the same approach that you're taking with MDR and XDR, we're taking to that kind of pre-breach vulnerability management. So, awesome. So for resilience, when I think about resilience, I think about, being able to bend but not break, and if you do fall down and get knocked down by the attacker, to be able to stand back up quickly. Offhand, can you tell us about the DRAS solutions that you have as far as like, whether it's SLA driven or whether it's, your average kind of time to stand up your DR site, let's say you've been replicating over there. to get back up and running?
Sure. Yeah. So we do something a little bit unique in the DR as a service space, and that is post implementation. So after the team has had the ability to get all of the endpoints replicating from customer prem to US Signal or from another cloud to our cloud, we do what's called a proof of completion test. And that proof of completion test, really, what we're doing is we're testing for failure in that scenario, right? Any DR test, that's the objective, right? You're trying to identify what's going to fail, what could fail, and then make the required changes to, make sure that if we did have to perform that live in a production scenario, that the failover is successful. So we do that proof of completion test, like I said, to test for failure, but then also to help the customer understand what the achievable recovery time is for their workload. It's all different, based on size of the environment. But then we actually write into our agreement the SLA for recovery time built out of the success of that proof of completion test.
Awesome. So the SLA is kind of a factor of really what reality looks like after that test. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. Rather than it being a dream number that was there before the initial project was kicked off, when people are saying, oh yeah, we want to be able to fail over in 30 minutes, when in reality that, it may not be reality that you can do that, depending on the infrastructure. So
yeah. Awesome. And I think, a lot of customers, they've got a mix of workloads, right? From a criticality standpoint that would dictate, hey, we're going to cover a portion of these with the DR as a service type offering. Some of these other workloads, we're just going to put backup copies out with US Signal. And, in the event that they do have to recover, those would be secondary workloads from a recovery standpoint. Take a little bit longer, but, from a criticality standpoint, not as an urgent recovery need.
Right. And for those of you who are listening, the difference between the two is if we're putting a copy of the backups up, then the copy of the backups need to be restored in order to get your systems up and running. So it's a cold copy of your backups. But if you're doing kind of a hot failover DRAS sync, then you have a VM that just needs to be turned on, and it's sitting there in VMware, that is there and just ready to go. So there's two different situations there, and obviously the backup is going to take longer because you have to restore it in order to get the system up and running, and you don't have a VM just sitting there waiting to go. So is that accurate, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And network-wise, how transparent is it? But when you fail over to the DR site to the production site, I know that's always kind of a factor. Like, what kind of network tricks do we need to play in order to make it work? Is there some kind of like eBGP, or is it like a VPN and then VXLAN over it, or NSX? Like, what's the architecture that's allowing that network to work?
Sure. Yeah. So, the networking aspect of disaster recovery is typically one of the more complicated components of the entire solution, right? So, just like the makeup of a customer's workloads from an application standpoint, the network is typically pretty unique as well for our customers. And so, we take special care and attention to really understand what needs to happen from a networking standpoint during a failover. Being a carrier, we do have a little bit more tools at our disposal, to support a variety of different architectures. If a customer, needs private connectivity, we can deliver that, right? They may have an existing wide area network with a competing provider. The beauty of that is, we can typically find a place throughout our network to stand up a port and integrate that customer's existing network with another provider, with the US Signal network and our DR services. So that can happen via private connectivity. You mentioned IPsec. That's a very common methodology for A lot of these solutions, right, will provide a hosted firewall through our partnership with Palo Alto on the US Signal side, tack up a VPN tunnel, and that's the means by which the customer connects in and performs replication. Now, from a replication standpoint, there's usually several networks that get built inside the US Signal DR space just for a normal DR as a service use case. We have to have a unique network for replication. We typically also have an isolated network for single workload failovers. And then we typically have a duplicate network of the customer's production environment in an offline state, assuming a full data center disaster, right? They're going to fail over their workloads, and we're going to work with them to attach to that production network on the US Signal side once the connection is broken from their source site. So there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of care and attention that goes into that. We typically build network MOPs as part of our DR as a service solutions that are specific to the customer, right? That way the customer knows what steps need to be taken. Any of the managed services engineers that would handle the case on the US Signal side, they can see that in the playbook as well. And they've even got a copy of the MOP there that they could instantiate into any of the equipment that is necessary for that particular DR exercise.
I think what you brought up about, the fact that you're a carrier and you can offer that private connectivity, as well as other connectivity solutions, along with DRaaS, probably allows you to offer a bundled solution to, our clients that we're bringing to services like this to US Signal, so that not only, private connectivity, but other, connectivity solutions are probably possible now through this partnership that never were before for our clients. So, that, to me, that's brilliant,
Yep. Yeah. And, even if you take that outside of the network space, there's often a component of the customer's environment that is not virtualized that's needed for DR, right? So, our ability to co-locate equipment alongside the DR site has been valuable for a lot of customers. If you think, about a mainframe system or, any other piece of hardware, that would need to be integrated into that architecture. That flexibility is key, right? Because you want to be able to support the customers in, whatever they need from a DR standpoint. There's other services like VDI. Horizon View doesn't play well with DR tooling, right? So, the fix there is to create a parallel environment within the DR site so that you can leverage either the DR site or the production site for delivery of those desktops to the end users.
That's great that can be a part of that solution too, because pushing clients to VDI when there's a disaster is something that we've been offering as well. So that's something that we can kind of integrate with this solution, and those of you who aren't familiar with VDI, it's really that virtual desktop infrastructure. It's giving you the ability to remote into a virtual PC in the cloud where your workloads are residing, so that the latency is nice. You're able to work as real on the wire speeds there, but we're able to protect that environment and not have to worry about all your laptops and workstations. So one of the common things that happens in ransomware is, an organization may have 2,000 laptops or workstations. Those all get encrypted, and it may take weeks or months to get all of those machines re-imaged and up and running. So a lot of times the solution is to get the client up on VDI, have them use whatever device is available to them, whether it's people's home computers, whatever, iPads, etc., to get them into a VDI solution so they can continue working once we get them up and running. So that capability that US Signal has here, it's a really rich set of offerings. So I'm excited about having you as a partner, and the things that'll help us, especially in the IR space, offer. But for the rest of the MSP and MSSP clients at Airiam that need some of these additional services. It's U.S. Signal in this partnership, this kind of carrier level, technology we're able to bring to our SMB and SME clients. Well, Pat, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about U.S. Signal or would like to add?
I think the partnership between U.S. Signal and Airiam is key because you folks have a specific discipline about your organization to really provide those advisory and ongoing managed services around cybersecurity and the disaster recovery that we're talking about here today. That's beautiful, right? That's a good partnership because it allows us to focus on our core competencies, right? Keeping the network alive, keeping our data centers up, providing infrastructure and tooling for these types of use cases. I think there's always an opportunity for customers to improve on what they're doing today. I imagine that you probably sit down with a lot of customers and they want to go through a tabletop exercise that is typically results in driving more ideas, right, or identifying gaps in what they're doing today, right? So anytime we have that opportunity to participate with you folks in those conversations, that's always exciting. We kind of take the same approach, and I just think there's tremendous synergies there from between the two organizations to help our customers achieve the outcomes that they need in the cybersecurity space. I mean, it's good guys versus bad guys, right? And
Absolutely.
It's an important need for all of our customers.
Absolutely. I think the two of us together can really do anything together and give any kind of offering to our clients that is appropriate for this. So for this, risk with ransomware and these ongoing threats with cyber attacks, the breadth of offerings from you, and then the security and IR expertise from our side, I think it's going to be wonderful working together.
Absolutely.
Well, Pat, thank you so much for your time today. This was a great discussion. To those who are listening, please subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. New episodes are typically coming out every other Wednesday. And for more information on Airiam, visit www.airiam.com.